The rain drummed against the windows of the community center that Saturday evening. Inside, the lobby buzzed with people shaking off wet umbrellas and greeting neighbors they hadn't seen in months. It was the kind of gathering that small towns do best, a charity talent show where everyone knew everyone, and the coffee was always too weak, but nobody complained. Backstage, behind a heavy velvet curtain that smelled of dust and decades of performances, a young woman sat alone on a metal folding chair. Her name was Claire, and she was 23 years old. In her hands, she held a piece of sheet music so worn that the edges had gone soft like fabric. She defolded and unfolded it so many times over the past 6 months that the creases were starting to tear. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She could hear the audience settling into their seats on the other side of that curtain. The scrape of chairs, laughter, someone testing the microphone with a few taps that echoed through the space. There had to be at least 200 people out there, maybe more. Claire closed her eyes and tried to remember why she'd signed up for this. What had she been thinking? She hadn't played piano in front of anyone since she was 12 years old. That was 11 years ago. 11 years of silence, of keeping her music private, locked away in her childhood bedroom where nobody had to listen. But 6 months ago, everything changed. She looked down at the sheet music again. Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat major. The notes swam in front of her eyes, familiar as her own heartbeat. Her mother had played this piece every Sunday morning. Rain or shine, happy or sad, her mom would sit at their old upright piano and fill their house with this exact melody. The memory hit Claire so hard she had to grip the edge of the chair. Her mother had been a piano teacher, not the fancy kind with a studio downtown and a waiting list of students. She taught neighborhood kids in their living room, charging whatever families could afford, sometimes teaching for free when she knew money was tight. The piano had been the center of their home, more important than the television, more important than the dining table. It was where everything happened. Claire had learned to play on that same piano, sitting beside her mom on the bench, their hands sometimes bumping into each other as they practiced duets. Her mother never got frustrated when Claire hit the wrong notes. She'd just smile and say, "Try it again, sweetheart." Music isn't about being perfect. It's about feeling something. 6 months ago, her mother died. It happened fast. Too fast. Cancer. The kind that doesn't give you time to prepare, doesn't give you time to say all the things you wanted to say. 1 month her mom was teaching lessons and humming while she cooked dinner. 2 months later, she was gone. Claire hadn't touched a piano since the funeral. The instrument sat in their living room like a ghost. Her father had wanted to keep it, said it made him feel closer to his wife. But Claire couldn't even look at it without feeling like someone had reached into her chest and squeezed. So she moved back to her apartment across town and tried to pretend that part of her life had never existed. But then last month, while cleaning out her mother's things, Claire found a letter. It was tucked inside the piano bench, written in her mother's handwriting, dated 2 weeks before she died. The letter was simple, just a few lines. But one sentence had burned itself into Claire's mind. "I hope you'll keep playing, not for me, for yourself. Because you have something beautiful to share, and the world needs beautiful things." Today would have been her mother's 60th birthday. Claire had woken up that morning and made a decision. A crazy decision, probably. She called the organizer of the annual charity showcase, the same event her mother had performed at for 15 years straight, and asked if there was still a spot available. There was. So here she sat, backstage, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. Through a gap in the curtain, she could see the front row. There was an empty seat there. The volunteers had placed a single white rose on it, just like Claire had requested. That seat was for her mom. It felt important somehow to have that space reserved, even though nobody would sit there. The MC was on stage now, working through the lineup. A group of teenagers did a dance routine. An older man played guitar, and sang an old country song that got everyone clapping along. A woman did a comedy routine that was more sweet than funny, but people laughed anyway, because that's what you do at these things. Claire was next. Her stomach twisted into knots. She could leave, just walk out the back door. Nobody would blame her. People would understand. She could text the organizer, say she felt sick, say anything. They'd fill the time somehow. They always did. But then she thought about that letter again. About her mother's handwriting. About Sunday mornings and the sound of Chopin floating through their house. She stood up. Her legs felt wobbly, like she'd forgotten how to walk properly. The MC's voice boomed through the speakers. And now, performing in honor of her late mother, we have Claire performing a classical piano piece. Let's give her a warm welcome. The applause started. Polite, encouraging. The kind of applause people give when they know someone's nervous. Claire took a deep breath and stepped through the curtain into the light. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Looking down at the sheet music, the notes swam in front of my eyes, as familiar as my own heartbeat. Rain or shine, happy or sad, my mom would sit at our old upright piano and fill our house with this exact melody. My mother was a piano teacher. Not the fancy kind with a studio downtown and a long waiting list. That piano was the center of our home. It was more important than the television, more important than the dining table. It was where everything happened. She never got frustrated when I hit the wrong notes. Her voice was always so calm, so reassuring. She made me believe that making mistakes was just part of the process, part of the beauty. It was cancer, the kind that doesn't give you time to prepare, doesn't give you time to say all the things you wanted to say. The silence in the house was deafening. The music had stopped. My father wanted to keep it, said it made him feel closer to her. So I moved back to my apartment across town and tried to pretend that part of my life, that part of me, had never existed. It was tucked away inside the piano bench, written in her familiar, elegant handwriting. But one sentence burned itself into my mind. I hope you'll keep playing. Not for me, for yourself. Reading those words felt like she was right there with me, whispering in my ear. Today would have been her 60th birthday. I called the organizer of the annual charity showcase, the same event my mother had performed at for 15 years straight, and asked if there was still a spot available. Was I really ready for this? The volunteers had placed a single white rose on it, just like I had requested. It was a silent acknowledgement, a space held for the person who taught me everything. An older man played guitar and sang an old country song that got everyone clapping along. And then it was my turn. I was next. My stomach twisted into knots. I could leave. I could text the organizer, say I felt sick, say anything. But then I thought about that letter again, about my mother's handwriting. I thought about her smile and her unwavering belief in me. The MC's voice boomed through the speakers. And now, performing in honor of her late mother, we have Claire performing a classical piano piece. The kind of applause people give when they know someone's nervous, when they're rooting for you before you've even played a single note. The grand piano on the stage seemed enormous, a polished black giant waiting for me. I found the empty chair with the white rose. I took one more breath for her, and then my fingers found the keys. The first few notes were hesitant, fragile. But then, as I closed my eyes, the music took over. I wasn't thinking about the notes anymore. I was just feeling. After a minute, I opened my eyes, and what I saw took my breath away. Nobody was moving. Not a single person. No coughing. No whispered conversations. No rustling programs. Just silence and music. A woman in the third row had her hand pressed to her chest. A teenage girl sat frozen with her phone in her lap, completely forgotten. They were listening, really listening. This was different. This was the kind of attention that made the air in the room feel thick and heavy with something I could unquite name. I played on, my confidence growing with each measure. My hands knew exactly where to go, when to press harder, when to pull back and let the notes breathe. But something strange was happening. The longer I played, the less it felt like just notes on a page. Each phrase became something bigger, something more. I'd wake up from nightmares and tiptoe down the hallway, and she would already be at the piano, like she'd somehow known I needed her. The music was her comfort, and she gave it to me freely. As I played, I thought about the harder times. My mother had kept teaching piano, sometimes accepting payment in casseroles or help with the yard work. It was like she was fighting back against all the worry and uncertainty with nothing but her fingers and those 88 keys. My eyes were wet now. I couldn't. My hands stayed on the keys, moving through the music like they were having a conversation with someone who wasn't there anymore. Thank you for the lessons. Thank you for the patience. Thank you for Sunday mornings and your terrible jokes and the way you play Happy Birthday every single year like it was a magnificent concert piece. I leaned into it, letting the dynamics carry me. As the final notes approached, a sense of peace began to settle over me. As I played the last, lingering chord, I let it hang in the air, filling the silent auditorium. And for a moment, the silence that followed was just as powerful as the music had been. People were on their feet, their faces lit with an emotion that mirrored my own. She glanced at the empty seat again, the white rose. For just a second, just one brief moment, she could almost see her mother sitting there, smiling, nodding along with the rhythm, probably already thinking about what she'd say afterward. Something encouraging, something that would make Claire feel like she could do anything. Around the room, something remarkable was happening. The music was reaching people in ways Claire couldn't have predicted. In the fifth row, a middle-aged man was thinking about his own mother, who'd passed away 3 years ago. They'd fought before she died. Something stupid about politics. He never apologized, never got the chance. The music was pulling at something inside him he'd tried to bury. 2 rows behind him, a young mother held her daughter's hand a little tighter. The little girl was only 6, fidgeting in her seat, not really understanding what was happening. But her mom understood. She was thinking about all the moments she still had ahead, all the Sunday mornings yet to come. She promised herself she wouldn't take them for granted. Near the back, a woman in her 70s sat with her husband of 50 years. They'd stopped really talking to each other somewhere along the way. Just existed in the same house, passing like ships. But listening to this young woman play, watching her cry while her hands brought such beauty into the world, the wife reached over and took her husband's hand. He looked surprised. Then he squeezed back. A high school senior who'd quit piano lessons last year because she was too busy, too stressed, too focused on college applications, was reconsidering everything. She missed it. God, she missed it. The feeling of getting lost in music, of making something beautiful, just because she could. Maybe it wasn't too late to start again. The nocturne was building toward its climax now. The part where Chopin pulls everything together, where all the themes and melodies converge into something that feels both triumphant and heartbreaking at the same time. Claire poured everything into it, all her grief, all her love, all the words she never got to say at the hospital because things happened too fast, and her mother was asleep most of those final days. All the regrets about not visiting more, not calling more, not sitting at the piano together one last time. But also something else, something lighter, gratitude, hope, the understanding that her mother lived on in this music, in these notes, and the way Claire's hands moved across the keys. Death had taken her mother's body, but it couldn't touch this. It couldn't silence the songs she'd passed down. The room felt charged now, electric, like everyone was holding their breath together, caught in the same current. Claire's hands flew across the keys for the final cascade of notes. The nocturne was almost over. Just a few more measures. The melody was coming back around, softer now, gentler, like it was saying goodbye. She played the last phrase with her eyes closed again. The final chord hung in the air. Then silence. Complete, total, absolute silence. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Maybe 4. It felt like an eternity. Claire sat frozen at the piano, her hands still resting on the keys. The final chord had faded into nothing, but she could still feel it vibrating through her fingers, through her whole body. She didn't know what to do next. Should she stand? Should she bow? Should she run off the stage before anyone could see how badly she was shaking? Then it started. One person began clapping, then another. Then suddenly the entire room erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It wasn't the kind of clapping you do because it's expected. This was something different, something raw. People were on their feet before they even realized they were standing. The sound was thunderous, filling every corner of the community center, bouncing off the walls and ceiling. Claire looked up, stunned. Tears were still streaming down her face, and she didn't bother wiping them away anymore. Through blurry vision, she saw the audience, really saw them. Half the room was crying. The woman in the third row had her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. The older gentleman in the back was clapping so hard, his face had turned red. The teenage girl was standing with everyone else, her phone completely forgotten on her seat. The applause went on and on. 30 seconds, a minute. People weren't stopping. Some were cheering now, actually cheering, like she'd just done something impossible. Claire stood slowly, her legs unsteady. She tried to smile through the tears, tried to take it all in. Her eyes drifted to the front row again, to that empty seat with the white rose. And for the first time since her mother died, she smiled and meant it, really meant it, because she understood now. Her mother wasn't gone, not really. She was in every note Claire had just played, in every lesson she'd ever taught. In the way, Claire's hands knew exactly how to shape a phrase, when to hold back, when to let the emotion pour through. Her mother had given her this gift, and it didn't die just because her heart stopped beating. Claire took a small bow, then walked off the stage. Her hands were trembling worse than before, but now it was from adrenaline instead of fear. The moment she got backstage, she had to sit down. The metal folding chair caught her, and she put her head in her hands, trying to breathe, trying to process what had just happened. That was incredible. Claire looked up. The event organizer was standing there, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes that were also red from crying. "I've been running this show for 12 years, the woman said, and I've never seen anything like that. Never." Before Claire could respond, someone else appeared. Then another person. Then suddenly, there was a small crowd backstage, all wanting to talk to her. "Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to share a story with you that truly touched my heart. It's about the power of music, memory, and the unbreakable bond we share with our families. It all started at a grand old concert hall, the kind with velvet seats and a sense of history hanging in the air. The lights dimmed, a hush fell over the crowd, and a young woman named Clara walked onto the stage. She looked so small next to the magnificent grand piano, but there was a quiet strength in her eyes. You could feel the anticipation in the room. Clara sat down, took a deep breath, and her hands hovered over the keys for just a moment. And then she began to play. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, like a question whispered into the quiet hall. It was a melody that felt both familiar and new, filled with a gentle sadness that pulled you in. As she played, the music began to build, swelling with emotion. It wasn't just a performance. It felt like she was telling a story. With each chord, the music painted a picture. I imagined sunny afternoons, laughter echoing in a garden, the warmth of a hand holding yours. The melody flowed like a river, sometimes calm and peaceful, other times rushing and powerful, full of passion and longing. You could close your eyes and see memories you didn't even know you had. It was clear this wasn't just any piece of music for her. This was personal. This was a tribute. After the first piece ended, there was a moment of stunned silence before the applause erupted. Clara stood and gave a small, graceful bow. She then walked to the microphone. Her voice was as soft as her playing when she started to speak. She told us the music she had just played was a composition she wrote herself. She titled it Elegy for a Nightingale. She explained that her mother, who had passed away a year ago, was a singer with a voice as beautiful as a nightingale's. Her mother was the one who first sat her down at a piano, whose hands guided her own, and whose encouragement was the wind beneath her wings. Clara shared that after her mother was gone, the world felt silent. The piano in their living room, once a source of joy, gathered dust. The music had left her life. For months, she couldn't bring herself to play. It was too painful. Every key she touched only reminded her of what she had lost. But then, one sleepless night, she found herself sitting at the piano again. She didn't have a plan. She just let her fingers move, and the notes began to pour out. It was a torrent of grief, sadness, and all the unspoken words she wished she could say. But as she continued to play night after night, something shifted. The sadness started to mix with gratitude. The pain was interwoven with beautiful memories. She remembered her mother's smile, her infectious laugh, the way she would hum along as Clara practiced. The music became her way of having a conversation with her mother. It was how she could say, "I miss you, I love you, and thank you all at once." Elegy for a Nightingale wasn't just a song of loss. It was a celebration of a life that had filled hers with so much music and love. As she finished her story, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Everyone understood. We've all experienced loss in some way, and we've all felt that deep longing to connect with someone who's no longer with us. When she turned back to the piano to play the piece again, it was different. This time, we weren't just listening to beautiful music. We were hearing her story. We were hearing her love for her mother. The notes were imbued with so much more meaning. They were filled with the image of a mother and daughter sharing a passion, a bond that not even death could break. When the final note faded into silence, the room was completely still for a long moment. It was a sacred silence, filled with shared emotion and reflection. Then the applause started. It wasn't just polite clapping. It was a standing ovation that thundered through the hall. It was an acknowledgement of her courage, her talent, and the powerful gift she had just shared with all of us. People were not just clapping for her. They were clapping for the love she had so beautifully expressed. As I looked around, I saw people turning to their companions. Husbands and wives held hands a little tighter. Parents wrapped their arms around their children. I saw a young man pull out his phone, and I just knew, he was calling his mom or dad. In that moment, Clara's performance had done more than just entertain. It had reminded everyone in that hall of what truly matters. It was a powerful wake-up call to cherish the people we have in our lives right here, right now. Leaving the concert hall that night, the city air felt different. The usual hustle and bustle seemed to slow down. I walked home with the melody of Elegy for a Nightingale playing in my mind. It made me think about my own family, about the phone calls I'd been meaning to make, the I love yous that sometimes go unsaid in the rush of daily life. Clara's story was a poignant reminder that we shouldn't wait. We shouldn't assume there will always be a tomorrow to say what's in our hearts. The first thing I did when I got home was call my parents. We didn't talk about anything particularly important, just the small things. But the call felt different. It was warmer, more present. I told them I loved them, and hearing them say it back felt like the most important thing in the world. And it was all because a young pianist was brave enough to share her heart with a room full of strangers. She turned her personal grief into a universal message of love and connection. So, this is my challenge to you today. Think about that person. Maybe it's a parent, a sibling, a grandparent, or a friend you haven't spoken to in a while. Pick up the phone. Send that text. Write that email. Don't wait for a special occasion. Let them know they are loved and appreciated. Let Clara's story be a reminder that the most beautiful music we can make in this life is the connection we share with others. Let's not let the melody of our own families fade into the background. Let's make it the main theme. Thank you so much for listening to this story with me. I hope it inspired you as much as it inspired me. If it did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories that celebrate the beauty of the human spirit. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share a memory or a thought about someone special in your life. Until next time, take care and cherish your loved ones.